"Excuse me, sir, could you play the part of my mom's boyfriend?" the child pleaded. The single father's response altered the course of their lives. Before diving into the story drop, a comment letting us know where you are watching from. We love connecting with our global community. It was a crisp Saturday morning in October, and Grant Morrison was busy shelving titles in the children's corner of his shop when a stranger, roughly 7 years old, burst through the entrance as if she were fleeing from a monster. She sprinted directly toward him, terror in her gaze, and clutched his flannel sleeve like he was her only lifeline. "Sir, I'm begging you. You have to save us. Can you act like you're dating my mom? It is a total disaster." "I am serious." Grant stood motionless, gripping a copy of Charlotte's Web, because in 8 years of owning Morrison's books, no customer had ever made a request quite like that. His own daughter Holly lifted her head from the cozy nook where she was sorting her beloved picture books, and chimed in, "Dad, she obviously needs backup," as if the situation required no explanation. Grant crouched down to meet the girl's eyes. Her panic was palpable. That innate fatherly radar activated, the one that spots a child in distress and demands action. "Okay, breathe. What is your name, and where is your mother?" The child inhaled sharply and unleashed a torrent of words at 100 miles per hour. "I'm Kennedy. My mom Simone is at the cafe next door with my late father's parents, and they brought this guy. He isn't really an ex. He was my dad's college buddy, but they are trying to force Mom to date him. And Grandpa Frank and Grandma Patricia keep making her upset. I heard them whispering about taking me to live with them, and I am terrified." Grant's mind reeled, trying to unpack the family drama while processing the weight of a 7-year-old casually mentioning her deceased father. Before he could form a sentence, the shop door swung open and a woman stormed in looking utterly humiliated. "Kennedy Ann Fletcher, you cannot just bolt from the table." "I am so sorry, sir. She has been watching too many romantic comedies. We are leaving immediately." The woman reached for Kennedy, but the girl ducked behind Grant, using him as a living barricade. She appeared to be in her mid-30s with dark hair and a messy ponytail and glasses askew bearing the marks of a brutal morning. Grant knew that expression well. He had seen it in his own reflection during the hardest times. It was the look of someone hanging on by a thread. One more straw and she would break. "Mom, just listen. I found a guy who can act like your boyfriend. Then Grandma and Grandpa will stop pushing boring Mike and his endless golf stories on you." Kennedy was begging now. Simone looked as though she wished the floor would simply dissolve and erase her existence. Grant noticed movement through the glass and saw an elderly pair approaching the shop, scanning the windows. Simone saw them too, and the color drained from her face, revealing just how desperate she was to avoid whatever confrontation was coming. A reckless impulse sparked in Grant's mind, overriding his better judgment. He straightened up and looked at Simone. "How much time do we need to kill?" Simone's mouth fell open. "I'm sorry." Grant shrugged, feigning a nonchalance he did not feel. "Your kid asked for backup. I am volunteering. How long do we have to sell the act?" Kennedy's face beamed as if Grant had just announced that Christmas was tomorrow. "Just lunch." "It is on them. Please, sir. My mom really needs an out." Holly emerged from the reading nook, book in hand. "Dad, can I join? I want to help. Plus, seeing you on a date would be historic." "This should be interesting." Grant rubbed his temples, realizing his 8-year-old was now fully invested in this chaos. Simone glanced between Grant, the hopeful child, and the in-laws who were now definitely entering the store. She made a snap decision that was just as wild as Grant's offer. "Okay? Yes, thank you. I will explain everything later, I swear." She seized Grant's hand and forced a smile that looked slightly manic just as the older couple stepped inside. "There you are, Kennedy. You had us worried." The woman paused, her eyes narrowing. "And who is this?" The question dripped with polite suspicion as she sized Grant up. Simone squeezed Grant's hand so tight he thought his knuckles might shatter. "Mom, Dad, I'd like you to meet Grant. He's, well, we've been seeing each other for a bit now." What followed was easily the most surreal 60 minutes Grant had ever endured, and that includes the time he fat-fingered an inventory order and accidentally purchased 500 copies of a title instead of 50. The group migrated to the adjacent coffee shop where Mike the Dullard date was waiting. Being introduced as Simone's new beau made Mike's expression contort into a fascinating knot of confusion. Meanwhile, Simone's in-laws, who demanded he drop the formalities and call them Frank and Patricia, launched a full-scale inquisition. "Where did you meet? How long has it been? What do you do for a living?" Down at the table's edge, Kennedy and Holly were carrying on, as if they were lifelong soulmates rather than two kids who bumped into each other 15 minutes prior. Then, Kennedy dropped a tactical nuke, declaring loudly, "Mom and Grant are so happy. Seriously, Mom never stops smiling now." Holly didn't miss a beat, chiming in, "Yeah, my dad talks about Simone constantly." Total fabrication, but she sold it like a pro. Grant found himself weaving a narrative on the fly, claiming they connected at the library where Simone worked. Ironically, that part held water. He frequented the Salem Public Library often to borrow business tomes he was too broke to purchase. Simone picked up the thread immediately, adding that she'd spotted him because of his eclectic reading list. They were constructing a phantom history that was bizarrely about 60% grounded in actual moments they'd shared as strangers. Patricia kept pressing about their long-term intentions, while Frank was more interested in the solvency of Grant's bank account. Grant casually mentioned owning Morrison's books down the block, conveniently omitting that a 40% rent hike from his landlord might shutter the place in 2 months. About 20 minutes in, boring Mike read the room, realized he was a third wheel, and made his exit. Frank and Patricia visibly softened, apparently relieved that Simone's alleged partner wasn't a complete train wreck. Midway through the meal, Grant caught sight of the simple gold band still circling Simone's finger. She kept twisting it, a nervous tick. He looked down at his own hands and Chasio saw the band. Laura had slipped onto his finger 9 years ago. He hadn't found the strength to remove it, even though she'd been gone for 3 years. Their gazes locked across the checkered tablecloth, just as Frank droned on about Kennedy's late father, Jason. In that silence, a current passed between them. It was a silent acknowledgement. "You're walking this lonely road too. You get it." Patricia watched the exchange with a satisfied nod. "It really warms my heart to see you moving on, Simone. Jason would want your happiness." Simone's eyes glistened with unshed tears, but she managed a brave smile. "Thank you. That really means the world to me." Lunch concluded with Frank insisting on covering the bill. They strolled back toward the shop, Kennedy gripping Holly's hand while rambling about her literary favorites. While the women and children walked ahead, Frank pulled Grant aside, dropping his voice to a rumble, and said, "Listen, son, I don't know you from Adam, but my daughter-in-law has walked through fire raising that girl by herself. If you're in this for real, you treat them with respect. Do I make myself clear?" Guilt gnawed at Grant for deceiving the man, but he respected the protective instinct. "Loud and clear, sir. Simone and Kennedy are incredible people." The moment Frank and Patricia's car disappeared down the road, Simone slumped against the brick facade of the bookstore, burying her face in her hands. "Oh my God, I cannot believe we actually pulled that off. I can't believe you stepped up like that. I am so incredibly sorry for dragging you into my chaotic existence." Grant leaned back against the brickwork beside her. Inside, Holly and Kennedy were already scouring the children's section. "For what it's worth," he said, "that's the most adrenaline I've felt in 3 years. So, thanks for the adventure." Simone let out a laugh that bordered on hysteria. "They've been hounding me for months to start dating. Ever since Jason passed 2 years ago, they're convinced I'm drowning. They keep dangling a custody petition over my head. And I'm scared to death they'll actually follow through." A cold knot of anxiety tightened in Grant's chest. The mere thought of someone trying to take Holly away was a nightmare scenario. "That is brutal. I am so sorry you have that hanging over you." Suddenly, Kennedy burst through the door. "Mom, can Holly come over sometime? She likes all the same books and she is so cool." Holly was hot on her heels, pleading, "Dad, can Kennedy come to our place, please?" Simone and Grant exchanged glances over the tops of their daughters' heads, dissolving into laughter as they realized one bogus family lunch had somehow turned their kids into ride-or-die besties. Wiping a stray tear, Simone managed to say, "I should probably let you reclaim your Saturday. Truly thank you. You have no idea how much of a lifesaver you were back there." To his own surprise, the words tumbled out of Grant's mouth before he could stop them. "Well, if you're ever in the market for a standby fake boyfriend to handle the in-laws, I'm your man." Seemed to have a knack for it now. The shadows cleared from Simone's face, her smile reaching all the way to her eyes for the first time that day. "Let's hope that was a singular crisis, but I'll definitely keep your resume on file." As Simone and Kennedy headed for the parking lot, Holly gave Grant's sleeve a sharp tug. "Dad, she was super nice, and Kennedy is awesome. We're going to see them again, right?" Grant watched the taillights fade, his mind lingering on the glint of the wedding band she still wore and the peculiar look she'd given him when she noticed the ring on his own finger. "Yeah, kiddo," he murmured. "Gut feeling says this isn't the end of the story." 3 weeks past the world's most bizarre faux date, Grant and Simone had crossed paths roughly 9 times. On paper, every single encounter was a total accident, In reality, Grant was beginning to think they were pawns in a highly sophisticated matchmaking operation run by two 10-year-olds. Kennedy would suddenly discover a burning need. For a specific title, the library lost, forcing Simone to march her straight to Morrison's books. Or Holly would develop an urgent moral objection to the book drop box, insisting they return her loans to the front desk, personally dragging Grant along for the ride. And every time the girls would trade subtle conspiratorial glances like tiny spies closing a deal. The terrifying part, Grant didn't hate it. In fact, chatting with Simone was rapidly becoming the highlight of his existence. She actually laughed at his literary deep cuts and didn't judge him for unwinding with middle-grade fantasy novels, mostly because she understood that a good story is a good story. They slipped into a rhythm so natural it felt like rediscovering a part of himself he'd thought long dormant. Simone began volunteering at the bookstore's Saturday reading circle, bringing stories to life for the kids in the corner, while Grant started hauling Holly to the library's after-school program where Simone worked twice a week. They'd retreat to a nearby table with coffee while the girls tackled math problems a little unit of 4 against the world. They discussed everything under the sun except the elephant in the room. Grant swallowed the news that his landlord was hiking the rent come January, a math problem he'd run 15 ways with 0 solutions. And Simone conveniently forgot to mention that her in-laws Frank and Patricia were still blowing up her phone fishing for details on Grant and demanding a sequel to the lunch. It was a silent pact. Keep it light, keep it safe, and definitely don't admit that the fake romance had felt terrifyingly genuine for about an hour there. By the 4th week of these accidental rendezvous, they were nursing lattes when Simone's phone buzzed. Her face drained of all color as she stared at the screen. "It's Patricia, Frank's wife. Oh God, I can't. What do I say?" Grant saw the panic rising and leaned in. "Pick it up. I'm right here. I've got your 6. Simone inhaled sharply, swiped the screen, and forced a tone that was painfully bright and breezy. Grant only caught half the dialogue, but Simone's escalating tension filled in the blanks perfectly. "Oh, that's so thoughtful of you to include us this Saturday." "Right, yes, Grant is wonderful. I'll check with him." "Okay, bye." She lowered the phone, looking at him like she'd seen a ghost. "They want us for dinner, at their house, this Saturday. They want to meet you properly. Frank made some crack about vetting you to see if you're the real deal. It's a test. I think they know." Grant knew the smart play was to bail, to tell her to end the charade before it blew up. But then he caught Kennedy staring from the homework table, eyes wide with dread. "Mom," she whispered, "if you tell them you lied, they'll be furious. They might stop letting me come over. Please don't tell them." Simone looked like her heart was breaking in two. And just like that, Grant made another one of those reckless, hard-overhead choices that were becoming his specialty. "I'll do it. We can survive one dinner. Buy you some time to figure out an exit strategy that doesn't nuke the peace." Seeing the sheer relief wash over Simone's face, yeah, totally worth the insanity. Holly leaned in and stage-whispered to Kennedy, making sure the entire room caught it. "Everything is falling right into place." A fit of giggles erupted from the backseat, leaving Grant with the sinking feeling that he was a pawn in his daughter's elaborate scheme. By Saturday, they were en route to the in-laws' suburban fortress, with Holly holding court in the back, drilling him on the finer points of romance. "Okay, Dad, rule number 1, hand-holding is mandatory, and use a nickname, something sweet. It's standard boyfriend protocol." Grant shot a skeptical glance at his 8-year-old through the glass. "Since when are you an expert on dating?" "You're still learning multiplication," Holly huffed, rolling her eyes. "Dad, literacy exists. Besides, I watch rom-coms, just follow my lead." They swung by to grab Simone and Kennedy, and the moment the doors closed, the air inside the car thickened with anxious electricity. Simone had on this stunning blue number, and her hair was styled in a way that framed her face perfectly. Grant found his gaze lingering a little too long and had to force his attention back to the asphalt. The destination was a textbook suburban estate complete with laser-cut grass and a shrine of family portraits covering every wall. Dinner felt more like a tribunal served alongside pot roast and trimmings, with Patricia launching a barrage of inquiries regarding Grant's 5-year plan. "So, Grant, give us a forecast. Where is this ship heading? Is this a permanent arrangement?" Grant caught a glimpse of Simone looking ready to melt into the floorboards before he spoke up. "I care deeply for her. We aren't rushing, but make no mistake, I'm all in." The fabrication slipped past his lips effortlessly, and the terrifying realization hit him that it didn't actually feel like a lie. Frank pivoted to business, and Grant gave him the highlight reel of running the shop for 8 years, conveniently glossing over the looming bankruptcy. Then Patricia dropped the bomb, asking if they were shopping for a shared lease yet. Grant and Simone practically inhaled their water in unison, while the girls watched the chaos with delight. Kennedy started weaving tales of family outings events that had technically occurred, though certainly not with the romantic subtext she was adding. Holly corroborated every detail with a level of conviction that bordered on sociopathic brilliance. Once the plates were cleared, Frank cornered, Grant steering him onto the back deck while Patricia kept Simone occupied inside, and the atmosphere instantly turned grave. Listen to me. Jason was a stand-up guy. He adored his girls, and losing him, it broke this family. Grant offered a solemn nod, struggling to find the right words. Frank pressed on. We aren't trying to steal Kennedy away. We just need assurance that Simone isn't drowning out there by herself. If you're stepping into my son's shoes, I need to know you're built for the haul. I need to know you won't cut and run when the water gets rough. A wave of nausea hit Grant. Deceiving a grieving father felt beneath him. Yet the panic in Frank's eyes was relatable. Sir, I buried my wife 3 years ago. Laura was killed in a collision, and I've been a solo parent to Holly ever since. I know the weight of doing this alone. You have my word I don't walk away from responsibility. The hard lines in Frank's face melted away. You're a widower. Simone never mentioned that. It dawned on Grant that she likely didn't know. They had kept their arrangement strictly business. Yeah, well, it's not exactly typical first date small talk. When they rejoined the women, the inquisition ended, replaced by genuine warm conversation. By 8 o'clock, they were saying goodbyes, with Patricia embracing Simone and insisting Grant return soon. On the drive back, the girls passed out cold in the back seat, leaving Grant and Simone in the front suspended in a thick silence until she spoke up. I had no idea about Laura. I'm so incredibly sorry, Grant. Grant stared straight ahead at the highway markers. It's fine. Like I told Frank, it's not something I advertise. 3 years back, a drunk driver blew a red light. She was gone before the ambulance arrived. Simone reached across the console, resting a gentle hand on his forearm. That is heartbreaking. And you've been shouldering all of this on your own. He gave a stiff nod. My mom chips in occasionally, but for the most part it's just Holly and me against the world. They idled outside Simone's apartment complex, and Grant killed the engine, but neither made a move to exit. I really am sorry for dragging you into this drama with Frank and Patricia, she whispered. This is way more than you bargained for when Kennedy begged you for a simple lunch date. Grant turned to catch her gaze, the street lamp casting a soft glow across her face that made his chest tighten with a sudden, overwhelming ache. Simone, I'm not trapped here. Honestly, this whole crazy mess is the most fun I've had in 3 years. You and Kennedy are incredible, and getting to know you, that part has been really, really good. Simone studied him, her eyes searching his face with an expression he couldn't decipher. Grant, are we still just pretending? Because it's starting to feel like we aren't. The atmosphere in the car charged with static electricity, and without a conscious thought, Grant leaned in. Simone drifted closer to meet him, the gap between them shrinking to barely 2 inches, when Kennedy's sleepy mumble from the back seat shattered the silence. Mommy and Grant, sitting in a tree. They sprang apart as if physically burned. Simone let out a breathless, nervous laugh. Right, I need to get her inside. She is going to be dead to the world. Grant scooped up the sleeping child and carried her to the apartment, leaving Holly waiting in the idling car. At the threshold, Simone lingered, turning back to him. Grant, whatever this is, I can't define it yet, but I'm really glad it's happening. Grant gave her hand a gentle squeeze. Me too. Definitely me too. On the drive home, Holly perked up instantly, wide awake. Dad, I know you like Simone, for real. Not fake-like, actually like-like, so why are you acting like you're still acting? Grant nearly jerked the car off the road. Where's this coming from, Bug? Holly crossed her arms. Dad, I'm 8. I'm not blind. You look at her the way you used to look at Mom in the old photo albums. That happy look. You smile differently now. Just tell her. Grant pulled into their driveway, killed the engine, and twisted around to face his daughter. It's tricky, honey. We started this as a lie. If I say it's real now, she might think I'm confused, or just playing the part too well. Holly unclicked her seatbelt and leaned forward with intense seriousness. Or maybe she's waiting for you to be brave first. Did you ever think about that? Inside Simone's apartment, Kennedy was in her pajamas grilling her mother with the same suspicion. Mom, you like Mr. Grant for real, right? Not just for Grandma and Grandpa. Simone sighed, tucking the blankets around her daughter. Kennedy, no. We are just good friends. But Kennedy gave her a look far too wise for a 7-year-old. Mom, you use your real smile when he's around, not the fake polite one you do for strangers. And you laugh at his jokes even when they aren't funny. Holly said that's what you do when you really like someone. Simone kissed her daughter's forehead, hiding her flush. Since when do you and Holly have strategy meetings? Kennedy smirked. Holly has a tablet and I steal your phone. Duh. We've been plotting to get you guys together for weeks. Later, Simone sat in the quiet of her living room twisting her wedding band. She thought about how Grant still wore his ring too. She thought about how they were both clinging to ghosts while tentatively reaching for something living. And she realized how terrified she was to admit the truth. This charade had stopped being fake somewhere around the second time Kennedy, accidentally, needed a specific book from Morrison's. Her phone buzzed against the cushion with a text from Grant. Holly just confessed. She and Kennedy are the masterminds behind our meetups. We've been hustled by children. Simone chuckled softly and typed a reply. Kennedy just spilled the beans too. Apparently they've been texting. When did our kids get so devious? Grant replied. Probably around the time we started lying to the entire world. They learned from the masters. Simone beamed at her phone like a teenager, then caught her reflection and set it down. But the smile refused to fade. 2 weeks after the family dinner, Simone dropped by Morrison's Books to return a cookbook she had borrowed. The moment she stepped inside, the air felt heavy. Grant was slumped at the counter head, buried in his hands. Beside him lay an official-looking letter, the page marred by the kind of aggressive red text that never brought good news. "Grant, what's wrong?" she asked softly. He looked up, his eyes hollow and defeated, a look she had never seen on him before. Her gaze drifted to the paper. It wasn't technically an eviction, but a lease non-renewal. He had 60 days to accept a massive rent hike or vacate the premises. The new rate was 40% higher than what he was paying. Simone crunched the numbers instantly, and her heart sank. A rent hike of that magnitude would obliterate a shop this small. For a local business in this town, it was a death sentence. "Why did you keep me in the dark about something this heavy?" Her tone cut sharper than she intended, triggering Grant's defenses as he shot to his feet. "Because we aren't a real couple, Simone. This mess isn't yours to fix. I refuse to pile my business failures on top of the mountain you're already climbing." The words stung like a physical blow. "Is that really how you see this? I thought we were friends. I believed that after everything we've shared lately, we were more than just actors performing for my in-laws." Grant raked his fingers through his hair, exasperated. "We are friends, obviously. But I didn't want it to look like I was leveraging that connection for charity or pity. I'm the one who is supposed to have it all together." Silence stretched between them, heavy with weeks of unspoken truths bridging the gap across the quiet bookstore. Breaking the standoff, Simone rounded the counter and clasped both his hands in hers. "Grant, I need the absolute truth. Is this entire thing still just a performance to you? Because for me, the acting stopped 3 weeks ago. I've been petrified to say a word, terrified you didn't feel the same." His eyes widened, grip tightening around her fingers. "Simone, I was halfway in love the moment you stormed in here chasing your daughter, looking like the sky was falling. And every stage dinner, every cup of coffee, and every trip to the library just cemented it. And yes, I'm scared to death. The last time I gave my heart to someone, she died. I'm not sure I could survive that kind of loss a second time." Tears welled in Simone's eyes. He was voicing her own deepest fears. "Jason has been gone 2 years, and I still wear his ring. Taking it off feels like admitting he is gone for good. Then you came along with that gentle smile and those awful dad jokes. And I see you're still wearing Laura's ring too. I just hoped we could navigate this wreckage side by side. Just 2 shattered souls who understand the pain." Grant hauled her into his arms right there among the shelves. "Forgive me for hiding the least trouble. I'm sorry I used our arrangement as a shield. Do you want this to be genuine? Because God knows I do." She leaned back, searching his gaze. "Yes, I want us to be real. I want to fight for this bookstore with you, and I am done pretending that we are pretending." The following day, Patricia called Simone at work. Her tone was ice cold, dropping Simone's stomach to the floor. "Simone, we need to speak. Frank and I will be at the library in 20 minutes. The line went dead before she could utter a word. 20 minutes later, the in-laws marched into The Salem Public Library faces set in grim lines. They demanded a private room, giving Simone just enough time to text Grant, SOS. In-laws here. I think the jig is up. Patricia didn't wait to reach the privacy of the room. We spoke with Mike yesterday. You remember Mike from the cafe. He found it odd that Jason never once mentioned a friend named Grant in all those years. The timeline didn't sit right with us, so we started asking questions around town. Simone, no one recalls seeing the two of you together prior to that lunch. I want the truth right now. Is he a real boyfriend or a fiction you created to silence us? Simone's walls crumbled. The energy to lie had evaporated. It began as a lie. Kennedy begged him to step in for one lunch because she was terrified you'd take her from me. But that's changed. We are a real couple now. It sounds convenient, I know, but it is the honest truth. Frank's expression soured into disappointment. So you've been deceiving us for weeks, letting us believe you found stability when it was all just theater. Tears spilled down Simone's cheeks. I was desperate you kept insisting I couldn't raise her alone. I was petrified you would file for custody and I panicked. The door to the study room swung open. Grant strode in, Holly on his heels. Apologies for the delay. Holly pointed me this way. I won't let Simone face this by herself. He met Frank and Patricia's gaze, his voice unwavering. This began as a charade. Kennedy asked for my help and I agreed because I saw a frightened child who needed an ally. But the acting is over. I am in love with Simone and she is a phenomenal mother who has raised Kennedy beautifully all on her own. Patricia's face softened, the harsh lines around her eyes fading as she delivered a confession Simone never saw coming. She cleared her throat, voice trembling. Look, we know you are an incredible mother. That has never been in question. We just hated seeing you walk this path in solitude. It is a brutal road, and watching you fight tooth and nail for the last 2 years has been heartbreaking. Frank chimed in, his tone gentle. Jason, he would want joy for you, Simone. He would want Kennedy to grow up in a house full of life and love. We are not here to subtract from your family. We just wanted to ensure you were not drowning. The dam broke. Simone crumbled, tears spilling over. God, I truly believed you thought I was inadequate. I was convinced you were gathering evidence to prove I was failing him. They settled into the quiet corner of the study room, stripping away the pretenses for the first time since the funeral. Frank and Patricia confessed their hovering came from a place of fear that they would drift out of Kennedy's life. In turn, Simone owned her part, admitting her pride had turned into a fortress, keeping out the very help she desperately needed. Grant didn't say a word. He just interlaced his fingers with hers. Patricia eyed their joined hands. So, this is not a show. You two are a real team. When they both nodded, Frank exhaled a long breath. Then we can rest easy. We are sorry for the pressure. We just did not want you facing the world solo. As the door clicked shut behind them, the tension left Simone's body and she melted into Grant's side. I cannot believe we survived that, she whispered. I cannot believe they actually understood. Just then, the library director stepped out from behind a stack, looking pensive. She had clearly been within earshot. Sorry to intrude, she said softly. The walls are thin here and I caught the tail end of that. Simone, you mentioned Grant's place on Main Street is fighting a lease hike. Simone blinked, still reeling, but nodded. The director's eyes lit up. We have been brainstorming community outreach strategies. What if we officially partnered up a local spotlight series? We could push Morrison's titles at our readings, encourage patrons to buy book club picks from you. Maybe even move some events to your floor. Cross-promotion could be a game changer. Grant looked like he had been struck by lightning. You would really do that for us? The director beamed. Independent shops are the heartbeat of this town. We would be honored to help keep the lights on. Fast forward 6 months. Morrison's Books wasn't swimming in gold, but the doors were open and the register was ringing, fueled by the Library Alliance and a wave of local support. As for Grant and Simone, the charade was long gone. They were the real deal. During the spring fair hosted at the shop, Grant orchestrated a little magic. He rearranged the spine titles on a prominent shelf. When Simone scanned the row, the first letters jumped out. SIMONEWILLYOUMARRYME. She froze hands, covering her mouth, sobbing as the room erupted in applause. Holly and Kennedy burst through the crowd, hoisting a glittery poster board. Don't worry about the details, it read. We planned the wedding. Just say yes. Laughing through her tears, Simone managed to choke out, yes, 1,000 times yes, I will marry you. 4 months later, they tied the knot in a ceremony that flowed from the library stacks to the bookstore aisles. There wasn't a dry eye in the house when Frank and Patricia took Simone's arms to walk her down the aisle, a profound tribute to the past and a blessing for the future. Grant kept a framed portrait of Laura near the altar surrounded by white roses. He had finally moved her ring to a silver chain over his heart. Simone did the same with Jason's band. They were not replacing their lost loves, they were carrying them forward. The girls stood as co-maids of honor in identical silk dresses, bickering sweetly over ring duty. At the reception, Kennedy grabbed the mic. "See, I told everyone my plan was genius. I am basically Einstein." Holly immediately snatched the microphone back. "Please, it was my idea to make Dad say yes." Grant and Simone exchanged a knowing look and dissolved into laughter. The truth was those two masterminds had pulled the strings since the second Kennedy stormed into the shop begging a stranger for a favor. Sometimes, the most desperate pleas yield the most miraculous results. Kennedy asked a man to play pretend and ended up gifting them a reality. Grant took a chance on a terrified 7-year-old and rediscovered a heart he thought had stopped beating. Simone opened her chaotic world to an outsider and learned that shattered pieces can form a beautiful mosaic. If this story touched your heart, it proves that offering a helping hand even when the path is unclear has the power to rewrite destiny. It reminds us that children often perceive truths that we grown-ups are simply too terrified to face, and that you can revere those who have passed on while still finding the courage to fall in love anew. Please press subscribe and send this to someone who needs to hear that it is time to heal, let go of the past, and risk everything for love again. We are so grateful to have you here. Never forget, the most profound connections often begin with nothing more than a brave child begging a stranger to do the unthinkable.